Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of RegAlytics, and I'm here to give you an update on this week's 28,252 regulatory alerts. But more importantly, I'm going to tell you why you should get your subscription to RegAlytics now. The reason you should get your RegAlytics subscription now is because we're going into the slow season. And what does that mean? That means hopefully you're going to be able to have time to think and breathe, because the regulators are going to go on vacation. This is going to reduce the volume of alerts, which will allow you to get to know regulators and think about how you want to go about managing the information for yourself, your clients, your customers. And most importantly, it's going to help you prepare the processes you want to get in place to be ready for the fall rush. The regulator of the week is the FDIC. He stepped down, folks. The chairman of the FDIC voluntarily stepped down after unbelievable findings of atrocious culture at the FDIC. He would have never lasted this long at a normal corporation, and he probably could have stayed because of the politics and how the leadership of the FDIC is organized. But I'm personally happy to see him do the right thing and step aside. It's just the principle of the thing. The topic of the week is introduced versus passed bills. So I find it fascinating every once in a while to compare what is proposed versus what is passed. New York was prolific in proposals this week, many of which I highly doubt will pass, whereas Maryland passed the most laws. So here are some highlights from New York. Senate Bill 9434 would prohibit the use of an algorithmic device by a landlord for the purposes of determining the amount of rent to charge. Senate Bill 9381 would impose liability for misleading, incorrect, contradictory, or harmful information to a user by a chatbot that results in financial loss or other harm. Senate Bill 9542 would prohibit the publication of a newspaper or magazine that was wholly or partially produced by artificial intelligence without significant human oversight. And then Senate Bill 9584 would require managed care providers to cover prescription drugs adopted by the FDA for chronic weight management in adults with obesity. My sense is these are the kinds of bills that will be heavily lobbied against by companies and are less likely to pass. In contrast, you take a look at Maryland, and they are passing bills that are very narrow in scope. So for example, Maryland Senate Bill 452 has passed, and it says that any provision in a contract for the use of a recreational facility that would attempt to limit the facility's liability for any injuries caused by negligence or wrongful acts is void and unenforceable. This is a very practical and narrow law. Maryland Senate Bill 182 also passed, and it puts out very specific definitions and limits on the use of facial recognition technology for criminal investigations and law enforcement. And finally, my favorite is Senate Bill 440 that allows individuals in Maryland to claim a credit for income tax for certain qualified expenses if they harvest an antlerless deer and donate the deer meat to charity. I loved that one. Had to throw it in there. What else do you need to know? FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, passed a new grid expansion rule that would require transmission providers to conduct long-term planning for regional facilities, which would include plans for renewable energy sources like wind, solar, and storage projects. ESMA, which is the European Securities and Markets Authority, put out a final report on the guidelines for naming ESG or sustainability-related funds. And finally, Letitia James is at it again. The New York Attorney General secured a $2 billion settlement with Genesis Global Capital for defrauding investors. The settlement bans Genesis from operating in New York. This is the largest settlement against a cryptocurrency company in New York history. We have the global supply chain of the world's regulatory alerts in one very easy to use place here at RegAlytics. If you need a solution for anything related to regulation, give us a call.